we're tracking. Sweet. Cool, so I'm Peter. I run kickassbasstracks.com. I'm gonna turn this light on here. I feel like you can't see me very well. There we go. Yeah. So I'm Peter Bull. I run kickassbasstracks.com. This is my Japanese-made weird P-bass that was actually found in the trash. It sounds amazing. It's a vintage, made in Japan P-bass. Sounds awesome. Original pickups. Estimated probably somewhere in the 80s, but we don't really know. Sounds great though. You can get super thumpy on it. Or you can get super aggressive with it. It slaps great. People always ask me if I record direct or if I mic up a tube amp or like what the signal chain is. So basically everything runs through this preamp. This is a tube preamp from ART. They make really great budget equipment, but if you upgrade the tubes, as I have, it actually sounds really amazing. This is basically working like a DI box, where one signal is recorded, and then the other one is sent out after it goes through the EQ and compression and the tube stages. I'm just going to grab the camera off the tripod there so you can actually see what I'm talking about. So I run almost everything through the ART Pro channel here. As you can see, when I hit the bass, we got a little compression. Sorry, these cables are in the way. We got compression, a little EQ. It sounds great. So I run everything through that first, and then after that I take the direct out signal, comes over here to the beginning of my pedal board. I've got a vintage octave pedal here. I've got this sweet quick draw from Outlaw Effects. Makes some crazy sounds. I love that. Nice, kind of subtle overdrive. Just give it a little bit of fuzz, but not true fuzz like this baby here. So what I'll do is then, as you can see behind me, all these channels are tracking separately. So I've got my direct in up here. This is the mic on the bass cab. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, after the pedal board it hits this old Roland Cube amp, which I really like the sound of. It's got a great old speaker in there, solid state, but again, I've got the tubes up front here, so this is kind of a clean thing, but also just to capture these effects coming through a real speaker, because that's how you naturally hear them. Anytime you're recording strictly direct, it's a little unnatural, because you're never hearing that unless you're jamming in one of those silent jam station things they sell, which I don't know anyone who's ever done that, so I don't know. The other thing I like to do, especially if I'm doing a more aggressive tone like the fuzz tone or something a little more distorted, instead of running the pedal board into this bass amp, I'll run it into this old, I like old things apparently, this old guitar amp I got from Paul's Boutique in Toronto, which is where I live, and yeah, then I've got that mic'd up with SM57 and this pretty cheap ribbon mic from MXL. Really sounds great. Fairly bright for a ribbon mic, but yeah, they complement each other well. And between the two of those, I can get a pretty sweet, I don't know, like guitar sound, honestly. And sometimes that's what you want from the bass, surprisingly. But again, I'm always recording the direct signal as well, so I can blend the two later and get pretty sweet sound. Even if I'm going for a more traditional kind of, let's turn on this East River Drive from Electro Harmonix. Shout out Electro Harmonix. I like to put a little bit of, not even quite dirt, but just so that it's slightly saturating on the speaker end of things. You can hear there's a little, yeah, if I play a power chord you can really hear the breakup, but so we're just kind of under that like audible distortion zone there. When you mix that in with the direct signal, helps it blend into the mix really nicely. Just warms it up and tucks it in so you feel it nicely, but it's not just really jangly, direct sound in your face. I got this active 5-string Dean, kind of a metal bass, but I've used it for a lot of jazz stuff and funk stuff, honestly. Sounds pretty good, actually. Again, because it's a hotter pickup, because it's active, you hear that drive a little bit more. This one's really nice for... I'm coming in a little too hot. Let's turn that down. That's with the sub only on the OC2. Super nice sound. Now if I want to take that sound, which is pretty mellow, if I want to make that cut a little bit more, I can put a little bit of that overdrive on it. Or if you want to make it totally crazy, fuzz. Does some pretty cool glitchy stuff there too. Whenever I bring this bass to a live show, people are always asking me, what was that? What is that? So it's a, I don't know if you can read that or if it's fuzzy, but it's a Peavey Millennium Series 5-string. It's a pretty cheap bass, honestly, but the unique thing is that I tore the frets out a few years ago. Just ripped them out with a pair of pliers, filled it in, sanded it down. And it sounds great. Like, it's missing half the bolts in the neck. I don't know why it sounds good, but it actually sounds great. I use this on a lot of jazz stuff live, or actually a lot of world music, which I've been getting into lately. There's a really great Persian music community in Toronto, and somehow they like the way I play, so I think it's great, and I love their music. So this is a bass that I use on a lot of that kind of stuff, because you can get those in-between notes, which is pretty cool. Or I use it on a lot of jazz gigs as well. Because it is fretless, so it sounds a little bit like the fretless upright. But it has just a really nice thumpy kind of sound to it, which makes it also sound a little bit more like an upright, as opposed to the more like Les Claypool or Michael Manring style of fretless basses that have the hard epoxy fingerboard and just really bright, aggressive sounds. This is actually just a bare wood fingerboard, and I am using round wounds with it. I tried the flats and it was just a little too dull because of what the fingerboard is. And because it's a fairly cheap instrument to start with, I don't really care if I wear it down a little bit over time with the round ones, and yeah, it sounds how I want it to, so I'm doing it. It's pretty good for fun too. In high school, all I used to do was record music in my bedroom. I had a little multi-track recorder. Actually, I still have it. Okay. Most people a little older grew up on the 4-track tape machines. I grew up on this thing. It's only got 2 inputs, built-in mics, and actually only really 6 tracks. They say 8, but 2 of them are stereo, so they don't actually count as 4 tracks, in my opinion. Anyway, so I was recording on this a bunch, and my dream was to eventually work in a recording studio. And then a very, very smart man named Mark Adam, shout out to Mark Adam, he probably doesn't even remember this. He told me, if you want to work in a studio, you should first go to music school and learn to be an absolutely excellent musician. Then you'll actually be useful in the studio. So I thought, okay, cool. Fast forward 5 years, I've just bailed halfway through a master's degree in New York City and moving to Toronto to kind of get my life on track. So I'm still playing in a bunch of bands, and I'm learning about the studio stuff. I kind of came back to that and realized, oh yeah, that's kind of half the reason I wanted to play music in the first place. So now I'm in a really great position where I have all this stuff that I've collected for recording and making music sound awesome, and all this time I've spent learning to master the instrument that is bass, and I figured, why not offer a combination of those two things online? So I set up kickassbasstracks.com, and that's where you can go to listen to some previous work that I've done and request free quotes. Just tell me about your project, strike up a conversation. I'd love to hear from you. I'm always excited to meet new musicians and hear new music and see if there's a way that I can fit in and enhance what's already going on. If you're interested in working together, please just send me a quick email at info@kickassbasstracks.com, or you can just head to kickassbasstracks.com, and there's a little contact form at the bottom of the page, of the homepage. I look forward to hearing from you and hearing your music and hopefully working together in the near future.